Nice to have you here.
Yeah, me too.
Uh,
It doesn't even make sense, but yes. Thanks.
It is. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you too.
Last time I saw you was outside the dry cleaners at the bottom of my street.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was heading to the studio. Yeah, that's on my route to work.
And when I was reading, at that point, I was thinking about you because I was reading about your upcoming record. And people were telling me about your upcoming record. And people were saying to me things like, this is Matt at his most vulnerable. This is Matt talking about things that are hard to talk about. They're very, very personal. And when I heard the record, I was kind of surprised how loud it was.
Yeah.
It's a rock record.
Right.
So how do you juxtapose like a darkness, a depth, a sadness with a sound that doesn't necessarily always reflect that?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it was sort of for a few reasons. I think like I almost like I sort of wore my heart on my sleeve to a point where I could get the songs out and I had the courage, I guess, to put them on a record, and then I chickened out and then put a bunch of guitars and drums on them. So like I almost made it to like a record where, but I think it, but when I look back and listen back to it, I thought, well, I kind of sort of came up with the term sort of a party rock record for the heartbroken. And I kind of liked it because I was thinking about my record collection, and there's not like a whole lot of records like that have sort of that sort of juxtaposition of something that you can blast at a party and it won't get turned off. But this still has lyrics that really convey a lot and something that's some darkness and some weirdness or some mystery, whatever. It's just not something that's sort of conventional, which I'm sort of proud that happened, I guess.
So why does it have to be that way? I mean, that's what it made me think. Like,
Exactly.
why does a song that's introspective need to be Nebraska?
Yeah, sure.
You know,
Yeah.
Some of the great songs are. You can almost kind of sneak the sadness in.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's easier to sort of play every night. But I mean, I do plan to do, solo versions of them as well. So, it'll sort of like, again, sort of unveil a little bit more of the actual feeling and stuff, which I think is important to do as well before the run's done.
And you've been doing some solo shows, I know, and I wanted to thank you for doing a lot of work for Fort McMurray, in the fire in Fort McMurray. You came to St. John's, you played a bunch of solo shows there.
Yeah, that was a real special night. Yeah, that was something else.
And did you miss having the band up there, though?
I did, yeah. I mean, I really love playing solo because that's how I started, and it sort of really brings me back to, like the other day I took the Greyhound to Hamilton to do a radio thing with my guitar, and it felt really good. It felt like that's what I'm really used to, and I love flying out to do things like that, and just playing solo is great. I love it. It really is. It's something I enjoy. But when I get back with the fellows, it's just like this is great. This is awesome. It's just nice to have both.
So I've been thinking for about a week now about how to talk to you about this, and it's mainly because I find it kind of hard to talk about. But I think we should talk about Jay a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
It hasn't been an easy 5 years. I'll read this part so I can get through it.
Yeah, sure.
Your friend and bandmate Jay Smith took his life while you were touring Coyote in Edmonton. I really haven't ever had a chance to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
I knew Jay a little bit too. I'd hung out with him a bunch of times. But I'm really sorry for your loss, man.
Well, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, we're all still, we're sort of at the point where, with something like that, and I've dealt with it before, unfortunately, and with experience of it, you learn that you'll never get over it. You just have to learn to adapt to life without that person, and that's, I guess, where we're sort of getting into that stage. This many years later. We're kind of doing that now, and so trying to adapt, and we try to put it into good things and like hug our friends a little harder and all those little things that go along with it. We're applying those to our lives.
Do you feel like you're a different person now?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I hope so. Again, it's with something like that, all you can do is lean on the collateral beauty that comes from it, like those, I call my parents more often and don't take things for granted, and sort of minding my P's and Q's a little more, and all of those things are they're actually good things that are happening to me, and there's so much, horrible, horrific stuff that you have to get through too. And I trade my own life to get Jay back on this planet, but it's not going to happen. So you have to sort of look forward and apply all those things that can, charge up the good things, you know.
When did that perspective come to you? Because I mean, and it's been well documented. We don't have to spend that much time on it. But
No,
on
it's
the,
okay.
on the night that the morning that Jay died, he died of suicide. You stayed on the road. You played the show that night. So did it take a bit of time for you to get some perspective?
Well, I think with us, I mean, we were just in such a state of shock. We were just in our tour van and just, and what it comes down to is something like that. What we as a band decided to do was to just say, what would Jay want us to do?
Right.
Because there's this push and pull of, you know,
You guys were in the van talking about it.
yeah,
I can't imagine. I can't
yeah,
imagine.
it was nuts, and trying to be strong and trying to be a leader and all that, and making a decision where it's like, okay, are we all going to sit on a plane from, you know, Edmonton to Halifax right now, or are we going to go put our guitars on and play loud music for Jay and try to make some sort of change, or maybe make some people feel better that are going through the same thing. You don't know. Somebody may have, you know, had that happen to them the week before, and they can come out and hear music and feel better. They were looking forward to the show, and we would have let them down. And ultimately, it was what would Jay want us to do, and he would have been so mad if he knew that we didn't play that night, you know. So that's what we did, and we took a lot of heat for it.
You took some heat.
We took some heat. We didn't take a lot of heat, but you know, you hear talk, and you know, how could you play? But nobody really knows until you're in that sort of state of shock, and the music. And when you're this, you know, into music this heavily, like myself and my bandmates, where that's the only thing we really know how to do. You don't do it to be happy. You don't do it to be sad or feel a certain way. You just do it all the time, right? It's like breathing or eating. So it's not, we can still play in that state and still feel something because it's like breathing. So to stop us to you know, withdraw from that sort of element in our lives would have been pretty catastrophic, I think, for us to just sit in a, you know, tin box in the sky and think about it all for, you know, it just wasn't an option. So
But I think there was a question, Matt, that what I was thinking about, because not only did you play the shows that night, but and I promise we're going to talk about something else shortly.
no,
But
it's okay. No, I don't mind.
You played the shows that night, but then in my hometown in St. John's, in Sydney, where Jay was from, and in Halifax, there were these tribute shows that were happening months down the line. And you were talking to his family a lot. You were really close with his family around that time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. That's one thing we made sure of before we played those shows, was to talk to his family and to see if that was okay.
Yeah.
And they were like totally fine. And we raised a bunch of money for his children, so that, you know, it's like if we didn't play those shows, I mean, the promoters waived their fee, and so you know, those 2 nights we played, the last 2 of the tour, made a good amount of money for his children, you know, which was everything to us at the time, was those 2, you know, because we knew how much Jay adored them, and you know, it was everything at that moment to like, okay, let's look out for the kids the best we can right now.
Do you still see the kids every now and then?
I don't see them much at all because I'm never out east anymore, and I never get up there. But
Right.
it's something that I really like to do, and sort of, especially as they get older, and because I know their father so well, you know, and I look forward to telling them all the funny stuff about him, and how much he absolutely adored them, you know.
The real question I had was, I think what I was thinking about, just as part of like the world in the East Coast, was that I think I was worried, or I was wondering whether you were actually ever going to get a moment, because you were touring, and then you were doing the J shows, and I wonder, is there going to be a time where you guys actually sit down in a room by yourselves and just go, holy shit?
Yeah, right.
Did you get that time?
Yeah, it does. It always usually comes about a year later. Not always, but I've you know, I lost a really close friend when I was in my early 20s, and I thought I was a bad person because I didn't cry.
Is that the one from City of Lakes?
I was around that time. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, but I thought I was a bad person for like not breaking down at the funeral or whatever. But I
Right.
realizing now, looking back with having some experiences, that it's when the shock doesn't, it lasts for years sometimes, and then it really hits you, and then I was so glad it hit me with Jay. It was you know, a good year later, and you just let it all out, and it's like the best thing you can possibly do, because you feel human and you feel like so much more connected to them, and then the process of, you know, the mourning process actually begins there. But up until then, it's a lot of shock, and it's I think it's different for everybody. But for me, was sort of a bit of a relief, and because I felt like I had to be a rock for so long.
Yeah.
And,
I think that was. I think that's what that was the worry. It was worried that
yeah.
you guys were just carrying this for so long.
Yeah.
How are you doing now?
Strange. I'm doing a lot better now. Yeah, I've a lot of thinking done.
You look good.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been boxing quite a bit,
Really?
and I'm doing I'm doing I'm paying a lot more attention to me, and yeah, it's very eye opening, those sort of things, and you have to do it. I mean, it's I think about Jay a million times a day still, but it's sort of, he's just, I feel like he's sort of cheering us on now, and his family and everything, and anybody who knew Jay would just, his sense of humor has not left the face of the earth. We still, it's still there front and center. So
So tell me about talking about all of these things, taking care of yourself, dealing with the loss of a friend, dealing with a lot of life, whittling it down and talking about it on this record.
yeah, it was. I mean,
Where did you write most of it?
I wrote it kind of here and there when I moved to Montreal to record it with Lowell Campbell, and
What a drummer!
yeah, he's nuts.
Yeah,
He's
it's
just
crazy.
such a beautiful performer. I wrote some there in the studio, and Lowell helped me out a lot with sort of carving them out. And just sort of really keeping the lines open. We only did it with a few microphones and this really good sounding source instruments, but there wasn't a whole lot of overthinking.
Were you writing
So-
it as you were making it?
Yeah, yes. Some I was, some I wasn't. Stationed at a range, I stayed up all night and made sure that every word was finished. And other ones I was writing in the booth, but I didn't feel bad about it because it just felt right. And I was really emotionally in that zone. I wasn't like humming and hawing over words. I was just letting it come to me. And that's sort of how this one kind of happened, to keep it real new and moving and keeping that momentum there, because I feel like people can hear when you're making up words and reading them off the page that they don't mean anything to you.
Yeah.
So this one was a bit of both, but it was very kind of flowy, and the whole record. There's only one song about Jay on the record. There's a few references in the vibe of it,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to do a whole drawn out thing about it. I just wanted to just write a love song to him, and then and that's what I did. And then the rest were a few other things going on, but yeah, it was just sort of this, I don't know, just where I could envision it, and we just tried to get it. And I think Lowell and I got it.
That's really beautiful.
Thanks, man.
And I just want to close off by saying, like, when I think of your band, I think about the road. I feel like whenever I used to see you, it would be in the middle of a tour. You were going on tour the next day, or you were just coming back from a tour. You spent a lot of years on the road.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
A lot of 200+ day years.
Yeah, this is my 18th September touring. I realized, yeah, we haven't toured every September, but this is my 18th one. I was thinking about that. We were driving to New York City the other day, and I was just like, oh my God, it's been 18 years.
So I was going to ask, do you still love it?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I've always loved it, but when you do it as long as I've done it, it just becomes a real home on the road. It's not like, oh my God, I'm on this weird vacation. Where am I? It's just like, you know what you're doing. You know the drill. You like the sights. You like that feeling of taking off on the road in the fall when the wind goes north, and it's a special thing that I'll always love. And
You can get through Toronto to Winnipeg.
oh yeah, I could do that tonight. Yeah.
That's the tough one.
It's
That's the
horrible.
toughest. That's the toughest one.
gauntlet. Yeah.
I mean, I like Thunder Bay. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong.
Oh yeah, stop in for a Persian.
100%.
Yeah.
Matt, thanks for bringing the boys in.
No problem. Thanks for having us, Tom.
It's a pleasure to have you in, man.
It's nice to be back.